This is your girl Lira, and you're listening to Self-Reflection Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Self-Reflection Podcast. I pray and I hope that this podcast episode is going to find you in the best possible state that you could be in for yourself in today. And if you're not doing your best, like always, I want to gently encourage you in this moment to go ahead and create some time for self-reflection. Self-reflection has been one of those things that have helped me tremendously, especially when it comes down to my mental health, understanding myself, and also just grounding myself, especially in today's society where, life is coming at you with 110%, right? So if you're not doing your best today, go ahead and create that moment for self-reflection. And if you cannot handle the emotions that you are feeling in this moment, because sometimes we might not have the right tools or we just might not be able to understand ourselves, go out, reach out, get the support that you need, right? Reach out to a friend, therapist, counselor, pastor, anyone that you can feel comfortable expressing yourself to. Again, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Self-Reflection Podcast. Today, we are going to be talking to Steve. Do you go by Steve or?
You could say Stephen Seidel.
Stephen Seidel. So today we're going to be talking to Stephen Seidel. Thank you so much for joining me on Self-Reflection Podcast. I'm going to let you introduce yourself to our family members here before we get into a conversation.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for creating a space for people to water the seeds of their mental health. I think it's paramount that individuals do that, especially today more so than ever. My name is Stephen Seidel. I am the founder of the Seidel Agency. We're an award-winning PR and media firm. I'm also the co-founder of Gents Journey. We're a men's collective that helps empower men to understand that vulnerability is invincibility. In addition, I'm also a leadership coach where I help C-suites, executives, and other individuals realize that connection is the most important currency that they can provide towards themselves and their clients. And it's an honor to be here. I've gone through many things, having recently lost my mom, business, professional, personal. And I'm honored to be here and self-reflect. And I think that moment of silence is crucial for all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much. You talked about losing your mom, right? What does grieving like in this space? What does grieving looks like for you, and how did you get through that, or are you still grieving?
Oh, that's a great question. I think grief, obviously, there's many stages to it. I'm finally to a point where I feel as if I've processed it, if you will. And so for me, it was a multitude of things. One of the things that really was continuing to extend beyond losing her was selling her home. So my sister and I had a little bit of back and forth around selling her home and the estate, and that did create a wedge in our relationship because we both wanted different things. And so it was up to us to realize each other's perspectives, but also acknowledge that we both grieve in different ways, and my grieving process was totally different from hers. And so recently, having closed on the estate, that's been, I guess you could say, the last straw, if you will, that allowed me to come out of it. But for me, the grieving process, it was really challenging because she was somebody, your mom, I actually was just looking at text messages last night that I saved. Had I looked at them 2 years ago, it would have been a different experience than last night, but it was from a moment of gratitude, reflection, and honor, if you will, just being able to have that connection with her. And for me, that's why I created my men's health group. I didn't know how to process it. I had moved to a new town where I knew no one. I have a virtual company where we help clients across the globe. So I had no employees. I had my wife and children, but they were pretty much my entire support system. So I created my own support system, which was my men's group. And after 5 years, it's been the thing that really allowed me to realize the truest potential of who I am.
Wow, I love that. When it comes down to like men, being vulnerable in that space, why do you think most men show vulnerability, or do men show vulnerability and we just don't recognize it?
I think that's a great question. I think overall, we've gone through multiple generations, from the boomer generation to Gen X, Gen Y, and wherever we're at right now, I can't remember. Yet back in the day, you have the breadwinner, and these are the individuals that are responsible for providing for the family. So they need to show an image of toughness, that they have the ability, much like cavemen, right? If something comes to them, they fight that off so they continue to move forward, and their eye was on the prize. And so oftentimes within leadership, people did not want to be emotional, but now we're seeing everything shift. Me Too, various movements, just being more open and vulnerable with meditation, whatever have you, and realizing that, we need to provide work-life harmony. I think Jeff Bezos calls it, not that he's the epitome of, individuals that are doing that, but work-life balance, you could also call it. And so now more so than ever, our generations have switched, because I think that fathers are more emotionally available. And that's the role that we take within our group. We actually created a product. It's called the Journey Deck, and it's 52 questions that kept coming up so that we could foster more meaning in our lives. And so being open and vulnerable and crying and talking about our feelings, these are all things that allow us to realize ultimately the truest version of ourselves. But what we go through, we grow through. So if we're not sharing these things and talking about these things, then we're bottling them up, and then we yell at our wives or yell at our spouses or our kids, or cut the person off on the road and give them the middle finger. And so that's where it's that daily practice that's really crucial, I think, to address that, to be grateful, but also to have a support system outside of just our wives or our immediate family, where we can talk about these things that have troubled us. I did my men's meeting this morning, and there was a gentleman who had tons of things happen with his sister and his girlfriend and his mom, and he had a safe place to share that. Had he not had that safe place to share that, his week would probably look a lot different.
Yeah. When all this, you guys meet together, right? What is the biggest hurdle that you see that most men are facing, and how can you encourage some of the men that are not in your men group to go through that?
The biggest obstacle for men, I think, is just being their truest version of who they are, because we often create a vision of what a man should look like, or what a father should look like, or a leader should look like. But the truth is, we're all unique in our own right. And the more we honor ourselves and who we really are, that's what it should look like. And so that's, on a daily basis, that's what we're striving to do. Is, I did a social media post last month that said, how's your heart? Or calling your best friend and asking them, instead of how are you doing? How are you really doing? Or how's your heart? How are you feeling? And checking in. And so I think that's usually the biggest hurdle, is just being open and honest, and realizing that it's okay to share exactly how it is that you're feeling, and to not sugarcoat it or reframe it. And so that's what we constantly do. We actually have a card deck. I have it right here. It's called the Journey Deck. It's a little bit weathered, but it's various questions that, how do you live your purpose each day? What has failure taught you? What brings you peace? How do you handle feelings of self-doubt as a man? Mm-hmm. These are all questions that are a little bit deeper than just, hey, how was your weekend? And that's what we strive to do. We strive to have deeper relationships with ourselves, with our families, and with our children.
Yeah, I love one of the questions you just said right there. How do you handle self-doubt as a man? And I'm posting that to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for posing that. It's something that we speak at great lengths. I think it changes on a day-to-day basis. It's very fluid. And so to go back to one of the gentlemen in our meeting, he had a really rough week. So we tend to stack negative emotions. And so if our mindset is not in a place where we're optimistic and self-empowered and reflective and aware of this negative stacking, then we're going to deal with self-doubt a lot differently than we may at another time. But oftentimes that's where the habits really come into place. So if you have a solid structure, foundation, habits, starting your day. We talk a lot about today in our meeting, exercise. Exercise is free to us. And it's one thing that if we do it in our lives, every area in our life will be better. Our nutrition, because you're going to want to eat better. Your endorphins are going to be higher. You're going to feel greater. You're going to be more physically fit. And so that morning routine is crucial for handling feelings of self-doubt. And then in addition, just realizing that we're all human. We have moments where we may not feel as if we're operating to our highest potential or peak performance. And that's okay. Within those moments, often what I typically do, just right there, take a moment of silence, breathe, know that we're breathing. We don't even have to do that. It happens organically. Our heart beats organically, and understand that it's all happening for us, not to us. And then oftentimes I'll write in my journal or just really try and dig back into the gratitude and understand that it's all going to work out. This too shall pass.
Yeah.
And the problems that we foresee in our lives, maybe we hit somebody in a fender bender, but you could potentially meet the love of your life who's, at the insurance counter. And so just trying to remain present in that moment, I think it all just comes back to that present moment. I'm in a meditation group run by a gentleman by the name of Pat Croce, and he talks a lot about a 6-second sacred pause. So taking that 6 seconds before you respond or react, if you will, having a 3-word mantra that you can remind yourself, or a 2-word mantra, like just this, just zen it, or whatever it is for you, creating that so that when these feelings of self-doubt do arise, this too shall pass. You have these habits or these trained thoughts that will allow you to overcome them.
Yeah, thank you. So you've dedicated at least 25 years of your life helping people get vulnerable and build connection. Can you take us back to the beginning? What was the moment for you that leads you onto that part?
So as a child, I was 5'3" when I graduated high school, and I had a lot of comparison, complaining, criticism. Those are like 3 really negative things, because comparing myself to the other kids that were all taller than me, they were mature. And finally I went to college, which point my parents pushed me towards mathematics and science, which I was very skilled in, but my passion lied in connecting and storytelling and understanding, the psychological side of things. So once I got to Penn State, I became a social chair inside of a fraternity, which for me was really unlocking who I was. It allowed me to tap into connection, really, to people, to my purpose, and to ultimately what I wanted to do. And then I pursued engineering, but then flipped and started to pursue entertainment, and then ultimately brought them together from a marketing perspective and a media perspective, so that we can couple the right side of the brain with the left side of the brain, so that we can come from an analytical perspective, but at the same time, really dig deeper into story. And that's really where I spend a lot of my time now, is fully understanding story. Is it the story that I was telling myself? Is it the story that, I can continue to create on my own? And yes, we have our past, but I think going forward as a company, a business owner, or anybody at an organization, the story is really where your legacy is built. And so that's that right now.
Yeah, before we get into your PR firm, I know you just mentioned the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how important it is for us to be able to merge both of those and be able to function from, I would say the feminine and the masculine side of our brain, whatever that's in our personal life or in our professional lives?
Yeah, thanks for asking. For me, I was raised by a lot of really powerful female women. And so when I was younger, my parents divorced. My dream was to become a great father in life. And so that was something that really took shape in me. I had a lot of female influence in my life. And then my father was a first sergeant. And so when you speak to feminine and masculine, there is that yin and yang. And I think the right side and the left side, anytime you're telling a story or you're wanting to influence or connect individuals, there's the story which you can connect to your heart, and then there's the analytical aspect or the numbers or the figures that typically resonate more so with your brain. And so if I can tell you something went up 97%, you're like, okay, my brain tells me that's a huge jump, I should latch onto that. But if I tell you something, I think Maya Angelou says, people aren't going to remember what you said or what you did, but they more so will remember how you feel. And so just understanding that anytime you're building something or looking to connect and impact individuals, having those 2 pieces in that story is going to help you connect with your audience, because your audience may be skewing a little bit more analytical, or maybe they skew a little bit more emotional. And so when you have both of those elements within your marketing or your media or your story that you're telling, I think you're checking off both boxes so that you can impact both parties.
Yeah. And how do you support in social media today? How do you support like media companies grow from, I don't know, the marketing perspective, right? Especially with how social media is changing.
Sure. I think as a company or an organization, social media is essential to your growth. Content is what is one of the fastest growing, things. Before, it was more about word of mouth marketing. Yes, word of mouth marketing is social media. It's various platforms. Whatever your platforms are, if you're a company or an organization, pick one. If it's B2B, hopefully it's LinkedIn. If you're marketing to consumers, you're probably going to want more bite-sized content. But the social media of it all, if not handled appropriately from a mental health perspective, can be detrimental, because it becomes another habit that you fall into, another addiction where you're filling a hole instead of realizing ultimately your greater purpose in life. And so as a consumer, be mindful of doom scrolling and all of these things, because we were meant to be creators and to create things. And then we compare ourselves to all these other creations, and we're felt less than or comparative instead of operating, to our highest potential. As a company or an organization, what we typically do is we go for mission-based cause. We want to be socially conscious. And this is something that we've been doing for 10 plus years. And it really took shape during the pandemic, right? Because you could buy something from Amazon, it ends up at your house and shipped there. Or what if you went down the block and you invested in that local business that was making, fruits and veggies that you knew were sustainably sourced, or somebody that really put their blood, sweat, and tears into that business, and you were empowering them and also giving back to your community in the same way. So when we work with companies from a social media perspective, we typically have a 5-step process. We start with their mission. What is their why? What is your purpose? Really understand how you can deliver that towards your core audience. And then your message. Make that message simple and clear and concise, like Tom's shoes, buy one, give one. You're buying a pair of shoes, you're giving one to somebody in need. And then after that, the media, what are your media and your connections? Who are the individuals that you're connecting with from a relationship perspective? Especially in AI, connection is your currency. That's your human advantage. AI is a tool, but it needs a human to run it. And so these media and connections and relationships that you build, they give you authority, they give you credibility. And then lastly, you have the marketing. Only once you figure that out, then you go to the marketing, social media. How do we want to position this? What is going to be our focus? And then once we've completed that, we want to ultimately build a movement. And that's why you see Taylor Swift being extremely successful, or other companies like Ben & Jerry's, where there's people that believe in them and their cause, and they build a movement. And that's how we approach it from a social media perspective when we're creating this content. We really want to align with causes so that you have a win-win-win. For the company wins, the consumer's going to win, but really the holy grail is the community also wins.
Yeah. Because today the influencers, right, kind of own social media. And some of the things that I've heard people say, like, I think his name is Jerry, or I can't remember his name, but he's pretty big in social media. He tells a lot of people, like, just post content, create the content, right? Create, post about, your personal life, post about this, post about that. What is your opinion about people from a marketing perspective and, and a PR perspective? What is your opinion about, like, just posting everything that you do and anything?
Sure. It's a good question. I think when you're creating content on social media, you should test, right? That's where you talk about the right brain and the left brain. So when you're going to iterate and test things, you need to see what works. And so that's where that philosophy comes in. Post anything and everything. Don't worry about it. You can, at the end of the day, you want to take the first step. We're all going to fail. You want to fail forward. Failure is truly where growth lies. And so post content all day. I have a coach I was recently coaching a gal. She's an interior designer, and she was hesitant to post things on social media because she wanted it to be perfect or she wanted to look great. And for me, that doesn't work. That's where we leaned in on your mission, your message. Who do you know? Who are the media connections or the partnerships that you potentially leverage? And then getting into the marketing, you need to post content that, you need to test it and try it. But at the end of the day, we want to see your organic, authentic self. And so the more that you can get in a process of simply posting and not having that imposter syndrome or stopping yourself before you start, that's really what everyone should be doing. And then having some idea of strategy of, it's been said that successful marketing is two things by Tony Robbins. He says, if you have a highly tailored niche and then you have an irresistible offer. If you're building a business, I think that strategy is going to be totally different than, if you're just posting to post or if you're posting from an influencer perspective. If you're posting from an influencer perspective, understand who you are. What is it that you love to do? Things that you like to highlight, and those ultimately should be the brands that you're going to want to approach from a native perspective, because influencer marketing is probably the most effective way to build your company or your brand, because they already have that built-in audience versus trying to target and do social media. There's tons of different efforts.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on what your company is, ultimately what your goal is. But I think you need to start posting and sharing in video content, obviously, is the fastest way to do that, which is why you've seen the rise of TikTok. Shorter, the better. And you need to test. Just try it. If you're not trying it, then ultimately they won't be buying it.
Mm-hmm. And also when it comes down to like social media and mental health, how do you think today's fast-paced social media is impacting our mental health, especially us that are consuming a lot of social media?
Yeah, I think social media and mental health, I don't want to say they're oil and water, yet social media and mental health often have a difficult relationship with each other, because when you're focusing on social media, yes, it's good for you if you're building a brand or you have something that you believe in. Create that content, share that, and it's a great tool for you to be able to impact others. It's when it comes back to, getting in the comments, being trolled, worrying about what people are saying, and oftentimes that may be hard for individuals to do. And then from a consumer perspective, consuming 8 hours of content each day is not healthy for you. When we grew up as children, I mean, I could spit a bunch of statistics and things, but there's just a total shift in the way that people function on a day-to-day basis. And that's where that human connection as your currency, building trust, building relationships, building rapport is crucial to your overall mental health. And so if you're consuming content and you're not talking to somebody or experiencing them, looking them eye to eye, you're not building confidence, you're not building credibility, you're not building any connection whatsoever. And these are all some of the fundamental tools that we need to just exist, let alone be successful. And so you'll see with AI starting to rise and some jobs being lost, people that are the most successful have been able to do, connect with others and have human connection and have friends and build networking. The days of the Rolodex, I don't know how old you are, but when we were growing up, we had a Rolodex and all the people in there that we met, we kept all of their numbers. A lot of that lives on social media, yet it's about having a conversation and connecting and communicating with them. And so it's important for us to call our friends, to text message our moms, to reach out to individuals that we've even met in social media and say, hey, can we link up and grab a cup of coffee? Because that will foster a deeper relationship, and that will help you in the age of AI and automation. Should you lose a job or, want to find somebody that can help you, whether it's mental health from a financial or workplace perspective.
Yeah. And I think it's native strategy to help listeners rebuild resilience and reclaim their authenticity. What is that strategy, and how can creators start to connect? I think you kind of mentioned this already, right? But how do they reclaim their authenticity? How can someone reclaim authenticity if they feel as if they're not connecting with the people that they want to connect with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in order to build authenticity, it's you. It all comes back to you. And too often we put ourselves in boxes. There's a really great show. It's called In and of Itself. It's a magician. He does a whole show about I am. And too often we try to say, I am a dad, or I am a marketer, or I am a mental health expert. But we are all things, and we can be all things. And so too often we create a box and say, I can't do this, or I can do this. But I think at the end of the day, when we start to love ourselves and authentically value who we are and what we bring to the table, that's the most important thing that we can bring in this world. And the way that that happens is through stories and storytelling and understanding where you came from. There's the age old, what have you caught and what have you been taught? What have you been caught is, hereditary. This is your DNA, like your mother and your father are a certain way. And what have you been taught? These are the things that you learned from society. And so having a better understanding of how you've evolved, where you're at right now, and where you ultimately want to go. And some of the clues to that are creating a simple list in your phone of things that I love. Create a list. Anytime you hear a cool song, you're eating something that you enjoy, just continuing to be aware, to go back to you, self-reflection, reflecting on a daily basis, to be grateful for these things that they exist, but being aware of the things that bring you love, joy, happiness, and realizing happiness is available to you in this moment. It is a choice. And when you accept that and understand you don't have to go to work, you get to go to work, or you can choose to go to another job. But that's where, if you have social media or however you're building your brand, you can leverage those things and begin to speak your story and share your story. And oftentimes it happens in a small group, your mom, your dad, a counseling group, a grief group, and you start to further understand. For me, having lost my mom, I've realized that my mission in life is to give back, to do good, and to make an impact. And so that's how I do that through my organization. And then that's how I help these other leadership and C-suite executives fully understand what their role is in life and what the legacy that they want to leave behind. But you can't just expect it to land on your lap or to be reactionary or live to somebody else's plans. You can build your dream or you can build someone else's. And that's where, when you fully love yourself, understand yourself, and start with yourself, then you can begin to move forward, find a company or an organization that is in alignment with your values and your beliefs. Great, step one. Then you can surround yourself and find a best friend at work. We all need a best friend at work or a best friend at home that you can talk to and work through the hard scenarios. And then once you start to build that, then you can begin to do other things. We all need a sense of play. Find a hobby or two that you enjoy. And then you start to build a well-rounded life where you are happy and realizing, your truest version of yourself and showing up like that every single day.
Yeah. How do you ground yourself? You seem very mellow. How do you ground yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. So one thing that works for me is going outside. I think everybody should go outside and take a 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk every single day. If you look at the word forest and you split it up, it could actually be for rest. So every morning I work out every morning. One of the gentlemen in my men's group has this acronym. His name's Dean Bakari. Give him credit because this is his, but I do the same thing. It's called PIES, P-I-E-S. So eat your morning pies. Do one thing physical. So I go to the gym every single day. Do one thing intellectual. Do something to stimulate your brain, whether or not it's Wordle, just to keep yourself sharp. Do one thing emotional. Pray, call your mom, call your dad, reflect for family members in that spiritual sense, so that you realize that there's more to us and there's more to, just waking up and having a bad morning from that spiritual perspective. And then in addition to that, for me, I like to play games. So I do a lot of backgammon. I play pool. I go to the lake and I play with my children. And for me, watching myself through my children is the most rewarding experience ever.
Yeah. I don't have kids yet, but I am an auntie, and being around them, it's a lot of joy, right? And from a parent perspective, how do you balance having your children, and then businessman, and prioritizing yourself as a man.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think it's really finding something that you love to do. And my brain doesn't shut off. So I'm constantly coming up with ideas and concepts and things. And so I test a lot of those, which I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I'm testing it with a business or a new business model, but also working with leaders as we build them and help them, realize their full potential. When I play with my kids, I think at the end of the day, it's about being present, just playing and being open and available. And I'm not perfect. There's often times where I'm focused on work, or to speak to the social media side of things, I focus on putting my phone down or putting it in my pocket, not putting it on the table during dinner, not taking calls, because I don't want them to think that this phone or technology is more important to them. They need to know that they are loved, that they are protective, and that they are seen. And so that's my goal with them every single day. Even before bed, my daughter struggles a little bit with OCD. And so she does checks and different things, and I can get frustrated because bedtime can turn from 15 minutes to an hour and a half. And I have to just remind myself to be patient with her and to think, how would I want to be treated in this moment?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And it's, as I'm creating this podcast, right? And, maybe I'll get some feedback here. I'm not sure how much of my work you have seen on social media. So how do you think that I can continue to grow on social media, right? And expand or stretch myself to reach more people, right? To grow more authentically through self-reflection.
Yeah, I think you're doing exactly what you need to be doing. And I'm working on a keynote right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the 20-year plan. And so too often we feel we live in this high, fast-paced society where everything is on demand. But really, true growth is not on demand. It takes time. And so I think you're growing through your content, you're growing through your podcast, and you're growing through the connections that you're making, whether it's through me or anybody else. And so just by having this podcast, it's a step in the right direction, really aligning all of your goals to be under one umbrella, which, you're doing. And just understanding that these things take time and they're going to change. I had a podcast that I created. It was a limited series podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's a true crime podcast. My roommate in college, his father was an FBI agent, and he busted the biggest cocaine dealer to ever come through Philadelphia. I was trying to tell that story for 20 years. I had the rights to both books that were about it. Eventually we made it. It's now being adapted into a TV show, but that took 20 years. And as I started to notice, a lot of these things in my life that I focused a lot on, it takes a considerable amount of time. And so it's not going to happen overnight, but if you stay true to yourself and you really, I think if you do not sacrifice who you are and stay true to yourself and find your people, I mean, it's as corny as it sounds, like who's your tribe, and you find your tribe and then find other like-minded individuals in your tribe, whether it's Jay Shetty or whomever, or Ed Milet, and finding these individuals that maybe you look up to or aspire to be like them and continue to follow them, contribute to them, and find ways to deliver more value. I think at the end of the day, when you're delivering value, that's when people want to learn more from you. And that's what you're doing through your podcast and your social media, and continuing to ask yourself, does this help me? Is this helping me? And if it is, then you're on the right path. But if you're doing it for somebody else, or you're doing it for clicks, or you're doing it for algorithms, or doing it for viral videos, then you may want to look a little deeper into what are your expectations. Because typically what we say is act without expectations.
Yeah.
You're acting without expectations, or like Thich Nhat Hanh says, there's a book called, I think it's called, I can't remember it, Peace of Mind. Anyway, he says, when you're doing the dishes, you're doing the dishes. When you're doing your podcast, you're doing the podcast. You're not doing the podcast so you can meet, like you're sharing your story and delivering value. I think that's all you can ask for. Yes, you can look into some strategies on social media, different hooks, teasing them, making sure that you're using trending audio, putting that down to 5% underneath your videos, making sure that you're using special tags, finding ways that you can, build on pre-existing trends or comment on other videos. There's ChatGPT where, you can find ways to incorporate that. For example, we have a real estate agent. Instead of staging homes, he literally can use ChatGPT to put a chair in the corner, or to make the ceiling fan above his above the kitchen table disappear. So finding cool and interesting ways that you can stay on top of technology and adapt them to what your story is or what your vision is.
Yeah, thank you for that.
For sure.
I got a free session without paying for one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm always down to deliver value. That's why I'm so grateful to be on the show. And if anybody else wants to learn more of that, at the end of the day, we're all going to die. And the sooner that we can realize that we may not be here tomorrow, the better. And so in our men's group, we just did a post about, how much money would you give to see till tomorrow? $1 million? Okay, great. That means today is your $1 million day. Go out there and make it count. And so we're all going to pass away. We're all going to move on. Build that legacy now. Figure out how you can deliver that value and help as many people as possible, and what that true mission is, and find your people.
And how do you stay, or how can one stay motivated when it gets challenging, when they're building something purposeful? Because a lot of times people quit, right? Like they're doing something amazing that would help many people down the road, but in the middle of the journey, we hit a roadblock, and then we lost our motivation, or we lost, our drive behind it.
Yeah. For somebody that loses their motivation or loses their drive, I might say that maybe you may have been in it for the wrong reasons. And so that's where it goes back to what I just said recently. Act without expectation. Is if you're building something that you're truly passionate about, look at Steven Spielberg. I use him as a classic example. When he was younger, he knew that he just wanted to direct. He loved shooting videos and, strategizing on how to do the composition on a scene, the lower third, the way that you would do all of that. And then he ultimately became a director because that's what he loved to do. So what is it that burns a deep desire within you? Don't get me wrong. When I coach, I have a Venn diagram. What are your skills? What are your passions? What do you stay up about? To me, I think it's like, what keeps you up at night that you're continuing to do and you do not realize that you've been doing it for 15 hours. If that's painting, great. If that's, and oftentimes people say, well, I have to provide for my family. Valid statement. How can you take that love for something that you're doing or delivering and reskin it? Maybe somebody loves baseball, but you're not a professional baseball player, or they love fencing or figure skating. You could work within financing if you're really great at numbers and you have an analytical mind. And so that's where I suggest for you, keep going, keep trying. Success does not happen overnight, to my point.
Yeah.
If you find it painful, stressful, or strenuous to continue to move forward, that might not have been the best choice. So thank God, whomever, Buddha, Allah, the universe, whoever you subscribe to, thank them for showing you that, because every moment in our day is a teaching moment. And so it's truly, to go back to the death of my mom, when I'm able to take a step back and realize the hidden power of grief for me from her, was that I have the choice to be able to reconnect, to rebuild, and reclaim my power. And I did a TEDx talk. It's called the hidden power of grief. And it's about my experience. And within that, you'll begin to notice if you are on the right path, which you are. We are all on the right path. We just don't know where we are on that. You will see, I call moments of serendipity that remind you that you're on the right path. So when my mom passed away, I kept seeing a cardinal come up. And it's been said that this is a reminder that could be somebody, you may think it's woo-woo, but for me, I kept seeing a cardinal, and I had that, or certain phrases that kept showing up. And so you're on the right path, just trust it. And if you don't trust that you're on the right path, or you're doing it for the wrong reasons, then you're probably not going to continue doing it, which is for the better.
Yeah. When you talk about the hidden power of grief, when it comes down to you grieving and the stages of you grieving, right? If somebody else is grieving in this moment, just to bring it back there, what is the hidden power behind grieving, and what are some of the steps that you kind of went through your own journey
Sure. That's a great question. So everybody's on their own path.
Yeah.
And so for me, the hidden power of grief, you can go watch the TED Talk, but I'll give you kind of the summation of all of that. It's there's a quote by Rumi: "Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with their heart and soul, there's no such thing." Oh, I'm messing it up. Wait, goodbyes are for only those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with their heart and soul, there's no such thing as goodbyes. I messed it up again. But anyways, the hidden power of grief essentially is pointing you towards what it is that you love. So in lieu of waiting till you lose these things to know that you love them, find them now and be grateful for them now and build these connections. If you are in the process of grieving, yes, we all will grieve. This too shall pass. But yet that love that you've had for that person, that house, that home, whatever it might be, is always going to be with you. And the sooner that you're able to realize that they are still with us,
Yeah.
where you want to envision that. Is it the gift that they gave you that's sitting on your counter? Is it the cardinal at the window? Is it your children? For me, my daughter would always say, "Love never ends." And for me, it's a constant reminder. And she drew little pictures. But knowing that this love exists within us, and the sooner that we can realize that we can move on to essentially grow through what we go through. And so this painful thing that happened, quote unquote, to you, it really happened for you, so that you can realize some of these things that maybe you did not acknowledge previously. And it's hard in those difficult moments, especially losing somebody that you love. I lost both my parents in 5 years. But it's the moments that you can realize that these are all teaching moments. So recently, I actually just got a tattoo like 3 days ago. So this is a tattoo. It's of an eagle. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. So I used to watch, this is my stepfather's initials and my dad's initials. I lost both of them. And I had these surreal experiences where I watched the Philadelphia Eagles team with my stepfather, and my favorite player growing up was on the airplane in the back row when I went to his funeral, which to me is just so bizarre. Out of all the things that would have happened, I get on the airplane to go visit my stepfather for his memorial service, and my favorite player that we used to watch together on the Philadelphia Eagles was in the back of the plane. And then my father, when my father passed away, we were going to go to a special Eagles game. He was very sick and he passed away. And then that morning, there was a very foggy mirror, and inside the foggy mirror, there was an outline of a Philadelphia Eagle. And so there's just different things for me that I choose to believe is the universe, God, whomever, like we talked about before, telling me that love never ends.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're going through is hard and it's challenging, but be grateful for those moments and those experiences and those memories that you did have, so that you can continue to share that love as you continue to allow your story to unfold.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because sometimes I feel like when we go through challenging moments, right, our hearts, we can close our heart because, we don't want to feel that pain, or we don't want to let people in again, right? So, that's really powerful. Thank you. What is the most pressing issue facing communities today when it comes down to mental health and connection?
The most pressing issue
Yeah.
today's day and age when it comes to connection is obviously technology.
Mhm.
It's the technology that is allowing us to disassociate from who we really are. In the past, we used to have to remember phone numbers and realize, oh, shoot, this is my mom. They mean a lot to me. I have to remember her phone number. This is my friend. I have to remember that. Or, hey, this is a topic that I really care about. I need to go and explore that or investigate that. Instead, now you go on the internet and type it in. But when we were growing up, previous to technology and having everything at our fingertips, we had to wait. We had to earn it. We weren't able to click a button and hear a song or create a song. And so our attention is being commoditized. Our data is being commoditized, so that we are being taken away from even using our own brain to think for ourselves. And that's where these push notifications come in. That's where when you look at Waze and it tells you where to go home. So to me, if I'm in that situation and I'm listening to this podcast, I challenge you to challenge yourself Try to remove technology from your daily life for a week. So put your watch on a different hand. How can you break these habits where we're put in a place where we're not exercising our, free will and the ability to experience things from a human connection perspective? DoorDash, so you don't have to talk to anybody and it comes and lands at your door. No, go out, show up at a Five Guys or Smash Burger. Go to the countertop. I teach my daughter this every single time. If you come in contact with somebody that has a name tag, say hello and call them by their name and watch what happens. They will smile. Everybody loves to hear their own name. So use their name, watch them smile, see if you can find a way to connect on a deeper level. And then you will start to blossom from within as well. Instead of a surface level where we have social media that we resort to give us a sense of self-worth, to give us a sense of education. And that's where I strongly suggest going out into the world and experiencing that and asking questions. And that's why we created the Journey Deck, so that we could ask questions amongst other men. I did the Journey Deck one time with a bunch of gentlemen who were incarcerated in and out of jail. And I asked one of the gentlemen, who do you have to forgive? And he was tatted from head to toe. This dude was a badass. I was curious who he was going to say. And then he started talking about his children. He started talking about how he had failed himself. And he said, I need to forgive myself. And he was crying. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. But forgive yourself. And along you, if you're listening to this, the most pressing issue to mental health is technology. It's the rise of AI, automation, and us disassociating ourselves from who we really are and the value that we bring to this world. We all have our own unique gifts. In my Sangha, the gentleman says, be the hole in the flute that the Christ breath flows through. Without those holes in the flute, we don't hear that wonderful music. And so we are all instruments. We are all tools for the greater good. How are you going to exercise your skill set? It's up to us to decide.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. This conversation has been amazing. I've enjoyed it the whole time, right? It also felt as if it was a moment for self-reflection for myself, right? And as we come close to this conversation, you just mentioned forgiving yourself. How I personally think that is one of the greatest tools if you're looking to heal from an emotional place, right? How is that? How is forgiving oneself important when it comes onto their mental health?
I think it's everything. I think understand, to go back to what we talked about before, I am a recovering people pleaser. So I was always trying to please other people instead of really finding that love and making sure that I loved myself first. I was making sure everybody else was loved. I grew up in a product of a divorce relationship. I could blame my parents, but no, that's on me. I need to fix that. And forgiving myself could be interchangeably placed with loving yourself, because we are all capable. Everybody's human. We're capable of mistakes. People drop things. They say things they don't mean. Words are powerful, yes. But as soon as we can realize that we're all human, that we need to love ourselves, to honor ourselves, be grateful for ourselves, the better that offer will be. Is that will allow us to replace judgment with curiosity. And that also shows up in all of our own friendships and relationships. I don't like that person. Well, then there could be a part of yourself that maybe is adverse to that maybe you need to own and be comfortable with and actually make them your friend. And so the sooner that we start with ourselves, the more love that we can give to others, like a flowing fountain.
Yeah, I recently did a little workshop on inner child healing and trigger, right? When someone trigger you, that's one of the things I talked about. When you get triggered by somebody, right? That's a lot of times we take that in the wrong way, like, oh, they triggered me, right? And they said something that made me upset, or they said something that is bad, that we end up like thinking that it's a bad thing to get to my point. But how I look at when someone trigger you, I think you said something, that's where this came from. But when someone triggers you, it's like they're reminding you of something in you that either needs healing or needs your attention, right? That's how I look at it from that perspective. So I'm not sure. You said something there that brought me to that thought.
That makes sense. I mean, the guy at the deli line that, cuts in front of you and you yell at him. I mean, it's like that sense of patience. Yeah. To me, it's those teaching moments. And that's when you find that self-reflection or that awareness, or you're the witnesser of your thoughts. It's like you're looking in the mirror. I still feel like the same kid that I was when I was, 12, 13, but my body obviously has aged. But it's those moments that you're triggered, you could say, oh, self-reflection. Okay, this is an area I need to work on. Or, that guy he's very verbose and yelling, and, I'm not like that. And you may think that that's a good thing, but that's just an area that maybe you want to look in further and either detach from or learn more about all of that.
Yeah, thank you so much again. If we want to connect with you on social media or any other platform or your website, how can we connect with you on there?
Sure. You can go to Stephen Seidel, and that's with a PH. It's almost STEPHEN. Seidel is SEIDEL.com/connect. So it's STEPHENSEIDEL.com/connect. That's also my username across social, or from a business perspective, it's theseidelagency.com and at the Seidel Agency across social media as well. And if people are interested, would love to give you, 4 tools to realize connection as a currency. So you can go to stephenseidel.com/connect.
Thank you. And, I love how you build your company, right? You build your company from the heart space, and you can tell just from our conversation, and I feel like that's what we need in our society today. That's how I think many other companies should be functioning, right? From that place, growing from the heart. So thank you.
Thank you. And I finally remembered the Rumi quote. I would like to share it. Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes. For those who love with their heart and soul, there's no such thing as separation. So essentially, to go back to people who are grieving, that's a quote that I tell anybody who is in a tough situation. I'll say it one more time. We do this thing in our group where it's like a haiku. You say it twice just to hear it. Goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with their heart and soul, there's no such thing as separation. So whatever it is that you're grieving through or missing or having a challenging time, it's still there. Separate yourself 18 inches from your head to your heart. Take a breath and soak it in.
And any final words for men in this space?
For men in the space, yeah. All the men out there, you need to go out there and be the best version of yourself. And so what I typically suggest is there's 7 areas that we focus on. I'm not going to go all into that, but if you want to go to gentsjourney.co, we have this question card deck. What I would ask you to do is call your friend, call your dad, call any loved ones, and tell them that you love them while you still have the chance. That would be first and foremost. And then secondly, go a little deeper. Tell your best friend how your heart is, or the last time that you cried, or what your favorite sandwich is. Say some random dude named Stephen on a podcast said, I should text you and ask you what your favorite sandwich is, or tell you the last time I cried. So I'm doing that. And then hopefully you'll notice that you guys will go a little deeper in your friendship.
Thank you again so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did today. And I also hope that for all those that are on social media trying to grow, we continue to create from an authentic place. We continue to put healthy conversations out there, healthy content out there, because I look at creating content as not only for ourselves, not only for this generation, but for the generation that is to come behind us. Because as we know, social media seems to be a thing that is going to live for a long time, right? Many of us are going to die, and what we're creating is still going to be here. So I hope that we continue to create content that is healthy for us and for the future generation. If you want to listen to more content on Self-Reflection Podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's called Self-Reflection Podcast by Lira Ndifon. Also, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That would mean a great deal as we are looking to grow our community out here. And also, if you want to follow me on my social media, you can connect with me on Instagram and on TikTok at Lira, LIRA_NDIFON. Also, guys, go ahead and share this conversation with one friend of yours. Let them know that you are thinking about them. I hope you guys have a blessed day. Take care of yourself, love yourself, be kind, and be gentle with yourself. Until next time, you're listening to Self Reflection Podcast, and this is your girl, Lira. Ta-da!
Lira, the lyricist that you don't want to miss.